They don't need to know you're in control. In fact, the moment they realize it, you've already lost your grip. True power doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't need recognition. It flows underneath the surface-shaping decisions, steering emotions, and bending outcomes without a single direct command. And no one understood this better than Machiavelli. In this video, you'll uncover the silent law that rulers, CEOs, and master manipulators have used for centuries. The power to control people without ever giving them an order. Based on Machiavelli's forbidden insights, you'll see how authority isn't about domination, it's about suggestion, subtlety, presence. You don't have to raise your voice to move an empire, you just have to know which invisible string to pull. Everyone wants to feel in control of their time, their choices, their lives. But here's the irony, the more someone believes they're making independent decisions, the easier they are to influence. People don't resist guidance, they resist commands. So the moment you try to assert overt dominance, walls go up. But when you offer options, when you plant ideas rather than push them, people follow without realizing they're not the ones leading. You've seen this dynamic before, in relationships, at work, and politics. The one who speaks the loudest rarely holds the power. Instead, it's the quiet force in the room, the one who observes, listens, and moves with precision, who ends up directing the game. That's the essence of Machiavelli's invisible power. Control isn't seized, it's invited. Let people feel free, and they'll carry your vision as if it were their own. Machiavelli understood that the strongest form of control is the one that remains unseen. When a leader is too obvious in their intentions, resistance naturally builds. But when the leader influences from behind the curtain, when their fingerprints are nowhere, and everywhere at once, they can shape decisions, steer outcomes, and maintain loyalty without ever appearing to impose their will. It's not about domination. It's about redirection. You allow others to believe they're leading while they're quietly following your blueprint. Consider how this principle plays out in modern life. The most successful negotiators rarely say what they want directly. Instead, they ask questions that lead others to offer the desired outcome themselves. It's the art of embedding ideas in someone else's mind so subtly that they mistake them for their own. That's invisible power when people fight for what you want, thinking it's what they wanted all along. This tactic thrives on psychological triggers. People hate being told what to do, but they love being given choices. By presenting paths and letting others choose, you ensure they invest emotionally in the outcome. And when people invest in something emotionally, they defend it, protect it, even when it goes against their original logic. That's why Machiavelli stressed manipulation of perception over brute strength. Even silence is a tool. The less you speak, the more others project. They'll fill in the gaps with their own interpretations, often granting you more wisdom, strength, or mystery than you actually display. By staying quiet at the right moment, you don't just control the narrative, you become the narrative. You let others do the work for you, shaping your image based on their needs and fears. Ultimately, control without orders is a game of tension. Too much push, and the illusion breaks. Too much distance, and the power dissolves. But in that narrow space in between, where people act of their own, while fulfilling your design, true mastery exists. And the best part? No one even sees it coming. Machiavelli wasn't merely a strategist, he was a sculptor of human nature. In The Prince, he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But he knew something deeper. The greatest rulers don't command through orders, they embed their will into the fabric of perception. For him, power wasn't loud. It was ambient. It was the ability to shift public sentiment without ever raising a voice. He admired those who ruled not from the throne, but from the shadows behind it. This wasn't theory. Machiavelli had lived through the violent upheavals of Italian politics. He saw how overt power made you a target, how direct commands could spark rebellion. What he admired most were those who could tilt the chessboard without touching a single piece. Those who could make others believe they were in control, while being gently maneuvered toward the ruler's ends. Invisibility to Machiavelli wasn't weakness. It was elegance. Take Cesare Borgia, the man Machiavelli praised as the ultimate tactician. Borgia never needed to demand loyalty. He orchestrated fear, loyalty, and admiration all at once. He delegated brutal acts to others, preserving his own image. He let his enemies discredit themselves. And most importantly, he allowed his silence to carry more weight than speeches ever could. This is the model Machiavelli offers. Not the tyrant, but the puppeteer. Modern leaders, whether political, corporate, or personal, who follow this code don't shout. They don't plead. They frame. They set the stage, then let others act as if it were their own play. It's the philosophy of psychological jujitsu, using the energy of others to achieve your ends. The moment your will becomes their idea, you've already won. And that is the brilliance of Machiavelli's law of invisible power. It's not about crushing others under your rule. It's about embedding your will so thoroughly into their reality that they don't even realize they've been conquered. They smile. They comply. And they call it freedom. Why do people follow leaders they barely hear? Why do they comply with systems they don't understand? The answer lies not in authority, but in architecture. The most powerful people don't impose, they design environments that steer others without resistance. It's not the order that compels behavior, it's the invisible structure behind the decision. Once you grasp this, control stops being about domination and becomes about orchestration. Think of it. Have you ever felt like you were making your own choice, only to realize later it was never truly yours? That's not coincidence, it's the result of someone framing the situation before you even entered it. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He believed that when people believe they are choosing freely, they never rebel. Why would they? They think it was their idea. The trick is to present a limited set of paths, all of which lead exactly where you want them. This is the power of controlled freedom. Allow people to feel autonomous, while gently guiding them toward a specific outcome. The illusion of independence creates compliance. It's not about force, it's about finesse. You don't remove choice. You limit it in a way that benefits you no matter what they pick. Once again, Machiavelli wins by not appearing to play at all. The curiosity deepens when you realize how easily human perception is manipulated. Set the right context, and people will justify your goals as their own. Take credit for nothing, just control the frame. When your presence vanishes, your influence often grows. It's the ghost in the machine, the whisper behind the throne. And that's why those who chase attention lose power, while those who stay quiet often own the room. The more invisible your control becomes, the more powerful you are. No one resents a puppet master they can't see. No one rebels against a rule they don't perceive. And the best part? When things go wrong, they never blame you. You remain untouched above it all, while others scramble to clean up the chaos you subtly orchestrated. That is the secret game behind all visible games, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Psychologically, humans are driven by the need for certainty, but also crave mystery. This paradox makes them vulnerable to invisible influence. When they can't fully decode your motives, they become more invested in figuring you out. And in that state of uncertainty, your control deepens. Machiavelli understood that unpredictability is a weapon. It keeps others on edge, always guessing, always off balance. Every move you don't make creates tension. Every silence you hold becomes a question mark in their mind. When you withdraw your reactions, people start projecting their own fears, desires, and assumptions onto you. This projection is your leverage. You are no longer just a person. You're a symbol, a psychological mirror. And people obey mirrors because they believe they are obeying themselves. This is the dark brilliance of invisible power. It hijacks the target's emotional reflexes. The moment they associate your absence with potential consequences or your approval with their self-worth, they begin to self-regulate. You no longer have to impose limits. They impose them on themselves. This is not manipulation. It's psychological conditioning, reinforced by silence, scarcity, and mystery. What's terrifying and effective is that they'll never realize what's happening. Because the brain justifies, it fills gaps. It prefers coherence over chaos. So when your presence is intermittent and unpredictable, their brains do the work for you. They assign meaning. They create stories. And those stories are how you stay in control without uttering a word. Ultimately, the greatest psychological power doesn't come from domination, it comes from absence, from restraint, from watching others shape themselves around the mystery of you. This is what Machiavelli hinted at when he wrote that men must either be caressed or annihilated. The middle ground, the ambiguous silence, is where obsession is born, and where power becomes permanent. So what happens when you stop demanding and start disappearing? When you no longer argue, explain, or chase, but instead shift your energy inward and let others come to you, you cease to be a participant in their expectations and become the architect of their reactions. Machiavelli's invisible power isn't about doing more, it's about being felt without being seen, remembered without speaking. Power in its purest form is quiet. It doesn't beg. It doesn't prove. It lingers. When you learn to command space without words, when your silence speaks louder than their noise, you've crossed into a new realm, one where your value is self-evident. One where people obey not out of fear, but out of fascination. Not because you told them to, but because they can't bear the idea of losing you. So step back, say less, do less. Let them wonder where you went, and why it matters so much. Because in a world addicted to validation, your restraint becomes divine. You're not just in control, you've become the gravity they orbit. And that, above all, is the essence of Machiavelli's final trick.